Scary deep woods stories, the shadows beneath Chicago. If you enjoy chilling horror stories, don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying episodes. The summer heat clung to the streets of downtown Chicago like a second skin as Detective Aaron Mallory stood outside the rusted gate of the derelict Bellhaven Hotel, an ominous stone structure abandoned since the 1970s and long thought to be cursed. Once the crown jewel of South Side luxury, the hotel now loomed like a corpse waiting to be uncovered. Windows blacked out with soot and time, and a sickly smell of mold and rot seeping through cracks in its walls. Erin wasn't here on a ghost tour, though. She was here because a sixth person had vanished in 3 weeks, all last seen within a 5-block radius of Bellhaven. The case files were thin but disturbing. Each victim had complained of strange dreams, visions of being watched, of being pulled underground by hands that weren't human. Local cops chalked it up to drug activity, mental illness, or simple bad luck. But Erin had been following these types of disappearances for years, across multiple cities, and she knew a pattern when she saw one. Something ancient was festering in the shadows, something that always began with whispers and ended in blood. She pushed open the gate with a groan of rusted hinges and stepped inside. The lobby was frozen in time, red carpet bleached gray by dust, chandeliers dangling like broken teeth, and an old reception desk that looked like it had been clawed at. Her flashlight flickered as she scanned the room, catching a movement in the upper balcony. A figure? No, just a curtain swaying, but it made her pulse spike nonetheless. She moved toward the grand staircase when her radio crackled. "Erin, status check," came the voice of her partner, Marcus. "I'm inside," she whispered, unsure why she felt the need to be quiet. "Nothing yet." The hotel groaned around her, a sound like breathing through collapsed lungs. She reached the second floor, the hallway lined with doors nailed shut, each with symbols carved into the wood. Circles, crosses, eyes. Something scraped on the far end. She followed the sound, her boots creaking on the warped floorboards. The door at the end was slightly ajar. She nudged it open and found a room untouched by time. A pristine bed, white sheets, a record player spinning though it was unplugged. Her skin prickled. Then she saw it. On the wall, scrawled in something black and wet, the word "stay." Her flashlight dimmed. The air turned icy. She spun around and screamed. A woman stood behind her, pale and featureless, with hollow pits for eyes. Erin stumbled backward, heart hammering, but the figure vanished like smoke. She radioed Marcus. No answer. Static. Then a voice, not her partner's. "You shouldn't have come here." The floor collapsed beneath her. She fell, slamming into darkness, landing hard in a tunnel lined with brick and moss. Water dripped. The air buzzed with whispers. She rose slowly, injured but conscious, and followed the only path forward. The tunnel branched like veins, and graffiti in an ancient language crawled along the walls. Her light sputtered, then flared, revealing something scratched into the stone. A map. It looked like the layout of the hotel, but with a vast underground network beneath it. Rooms, chambers, an altar. Her breath caught. She turned a corner and found a man shackled to the wall, eyes wide with terror. "They don't let you leave," he croaked. Before she could respond, the tunnel behind her filled with footsteps, dozens, fast and frantic. She ran, dodging debris, as shadows chased her with inhuman speed. She dove through a broken grate and emerged in a boiler room, heart thundering. There was an exit door, but it had no handle. She turned and saw mirrors on every wall, reflecting her, but not exactly her. In the mirrors, her reflections moved differently, smirking, bleeding from their eyes. She screamed. The room filled with laughter, high, cold, echoing. The lights burst one by one, then darkness. The only sound was her breathing, and the whisper now right beside her ear. "You're already part of it," and the door creaked open by itself. Erin woke up to the groaning hiss of steam pipes and the nauseating smell of burning hair. Her head throbbed, her hands scraped from the fall, but the memory of the whispers clung to her skull like a parasite. The boiler room was cold now, unnaturally cold, and the broken mirrors had reassembled themselves as if time had reversed. She stumbled toward the door that had creaked open, stepping into a narrow corridor lined with flickering bulbs that buzzed like insects on a carcass. Every few feet, a door marked with different hotel room numbers appeared, even though they were clearly far beneath the surface. She passed room 203. Its door pulsated like it had a heartbeat. She didn't stop. At room 207, a scream burst from inside, and when she glanced through the peephole, she saw a version of herself being drowned in a bathtub by invisible hands. She recoiled, pressing onward, until she reached a metal stairwell spiraling upward. As she ascended, she heard it again. Whispers, but now layered, like multiple people speaking over each other. Some begged for help. Others chanted. She emerged in a hallway she recognized from the hotel's second floor, but it looked different, cleaner, restored, and populated. Men and women in 1950s attire strolled past her, eyes empty, movements jerky. It was like stepping into a preserved memory. No one acknowledged her. A bellhop with no mouth pushed a cart down the hall, blood pooling beneath one of the doors he passed. Erin moved cautiously, heart hammering. She reached room 313, her hand trembling as she turned the knob. Inside was a lavish suite, untouched by time. On the desk sat a black and white photo of 6 people. 5 of them matched the missing persons. The 6th was a man whose face was burned away, a black void where identity should be. Beneath the photo, a note: "He collects the broken." Suddenly the television blared static. Then an image flickered, her own face bruised, eyes pleading. "Don't trust the reflections," her image whispered before the screen shattered. She spun around. A tall figure stood in the doorway, a bellhop, face shrouded in shadow, holding an old leather-bound guest book. He placed it on the table and vanished. Erin approached the book. Inside were names, hundreds, thousands, dating back to the 1920s. Every few pages, the ink changed from black to crimson. Then she found it. Her name, freshly written. Her blood ran cold. A page later, she saw Marcus's name. She hadn't seen or heard from him since entering the hotel. Panic surged through her veins. As she turned to leave, the door slammed shut and locks engaged with metallic clicks. The room darkened. Shadows bled from the corners, crawling along the walls, coalescing into forms. Faces, hands, mouths. They whispered her fears back to her. Abandonment, failure, guilt. One shadow stepped forward. It had her face, but older, broken, eyes hollowed out. "You never left," it said. Erin lunged for the window, smashing it with a lamp and diving through into the alley 2 stories below. She hit the dumpster hard, knocking the wind from her lungs, but alive. Gasping, she staggered up, staring at the hotel's facade. It now looked as decrepit as when she first arrived. Had she imagined it all? But the guest book was still clutched in her hand. Blood seeped from its pages. She stumbled back to her car and tried the radio. Static. Then Marcus's voice, faint and broken. "He has me. Under the stairs. Don't let him finish the ritual." Then silence. Erin turned the key. The car wouldn't start. Every light on the dashboard blinked in erratic rhythm. The rearview mirror showed not the alley, but the suite she had just escaped from, her reflection still trapped inside, screaming for help. She leapt out of the car and ran down the block, adrenaline overriding reason, until she found a gas station still open. Inside, the clerk looked up at her with dead eyes and said, "Once you check in, you never really check out." Erin turned to run, but the exit had vanished. Only the aisles remained, now stretching endlessly in every direction. The fluorescent lights dimmed, and the radio on the counter switched to a new frequency. It played a song from the 1930s, scratchy and warped, and then the same voice from before whispered, "You're still in the hotel, Erin. You always have been." Erin stood frozen in the middle of the endless aisles, the fluorescent lights humming above her, like a swarm of mechanical insects. Her breathing grew shallow, heart racing as each aisle repeated the same items. Cans with faded labels, rows of cigarettes, and candy that looked like it had expired decades ago. She called out, but her voice was swallowed by the shelves. The sound deadened. She tried retracing her steps, only to find that every turn led her deeper, each direction becoming more twisted. In the corner of her vision, figures began appearing, shadows in the next aisle, reflections that didn't move in sync with her. One turned and stared directly at her with empty sockets where its eyes should have been. She ran, panic surging. As she sprinted past what should have been the register, she slammed into a wall that hadn't been there before. Her hand pressed against it. It was breathing. The wall pulsed beneath her palm like a living organ. A low moan vibrated through the floor. She looked up and saw the clerk standing a few feet away, eyes black and leaking something tar-like, head tilting unnaturally. "You're late," he said. "He doesn't like when you're late." Behind him, the shelves began shifting, folding into themselves until they formed an archway of rusted metal and flickering lights. Against her better judgment, she stepped through. On the other side was a dark underground train platform. The air smelled of sulfur and mold. Tracks stretched into the void in both directions. The sign above read, "North Blackwater Terminal, established 1913. A train screeched into the station, its design antique, all brass and wood, windows blackened. The doors hissed open, and inside were passengers dressed in funeral attire, all with gauze covering their eyes. One seat at the center remained empty. As Erin stepped on, the doors shut. She tried to get off, but it was too late. The train lurched forward and the interior lights dimmed. She looked at the passengers. None breathed, none moved, yet their heads turned ever so slightly in unison as the train entered a tunnel. Outside the windows, the walls were etched with carvings, thousands of tally marks, symbols, and faces frozen in silent screams. A voice crackled through the intercom. "Next stop, Reflections End." Her seat grew hot, burning her through her jeans. She jumped up only to find that her seat was now glowing red and bearing her full name, carved into the wood. She ran to the next car, which was completely empty, save for a single mirror hanging on the far wall. Her reflection was wrong. It smiled when she didn't, blinked out of sync. Suddenly it mouthed something silently, and behind her in the reflection, she saw a figure standing in the doorway. Tall, dressed in bellhop uniform, face featureless except for a single black tear running down one cheek. She spun around, but the doorway was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, her reflection was gone. The train screeched to a stop. She was thrown against the wall. The lights flickered out. Silence. Then a low, dragging sound came from the corridor behind her. A voice whispered through the darkness. "Ticket, please." Erin crawled forward, found the emergency exit, and pried it open. She tumbled into a dimly lit tunnel, splashing into ankle-deep water. The train behind her disappeared into the black, vanishing like smoke. Ahead, a red light pulsed at the end of the tunnel. She ran toward it, soaked and shivering, until she reached a metal ladder leading up. She climbed, rung by rusted rung, emerging into a cramped basement filled with old furniture and boxes marked with names. Names she recognized from the guest book. Marcus's box was open, inside a tattered hoodie she remembered from college, covered in dried blood. Something shifted behind her. She turned slowly. A man stood in the corner, his face half burned, wearing an old hotel manager's suit. His mouth split into a grin too wide for his face. "You shouldn't be here yet," he rasped. Erin grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and swung as he lunged. She missed. He vanished mid-motion, replaced by dozens of cockroaches scurrying away. The lights popped overhead. She found a stairwell and ascended to the first floor of what appeared to be an abandoned apartment building. But as she reached the top, her phone buzzed. It had a signal. One new message. From Marcus. It read, "You're getting close. He's not real. Neither am I." Then the phone sparked and died in her hand. Erin looked up and realized the hallway matched the hotel's second floor exactly. Somehow she was back. Or had she ever left? A distant voice whispered from behind a closed door. "Come to room 313. Let's finish what we started." Erin stared at the door marked 313. The brass numbers slightly crooked, tarnished with age. A hum vibrated through the air like something breathing just beyond it. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle, which felt unnaturally cold. And when she turned it, the door swung inward without resistance. Inside, the room was identical to hers, but not. The bed was the same floral print, the windows still framed by moth-eaten curtains, but the air was heavy, rancid, and the wallpaper pulsed like skin. A figure sat in the armchair by the window, shrouded in shadow. It spoke without moving. You opened the door. That means you're ready. Erin tried to demand answers, but her throat seized up. Her voice was gone. The figure slowly stood, revealing a gaunt man in a funeral suit, his skin ashen, eyes sunken, lips stitched shut. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, ornate box. When he opened it, it emitted a high-pitched ringing that pierced her skull. She screamed silently, clutching her head as visions flooded her mind. Of Marcus trapped in the basement, of herself wandering an infinite maze of hotel hallways, of the hotel itself growing roots into the city, spreading beneath streets and buildings. The man dissolved into dust as the vision ceased, and Erin collapsed to her knees. The box clattered to the floor but remained shut. She snatched it up, desperate to destroy it. But the moment her skin touched it, her mind filled with a voice, not her own, whispering in ancient tongues. She dropped it and backed away. Suddenly, the walls of room 313 began to melt, revealing a chamber of raw stone, lit by candles that flickered without flame. The floor was carved with symbols that pulsed red. In the center stood a stone altar, and chained to it was Marcus. He lifted his head weakly. He's feeding off us, he croaked. The hotel isn't a building. It's a gate. Erin rushed forward, only for a dark figure to rise from behind the altar. A mass of shifting shadows with dozens of eyes and long clawed fingers. It spoke with many voices at once. You are both bound. One escapes. One remains. It extended a claw toward Erin. She screamed and held up the box. The entity recoiled, shrieking. The box burned in her hands, searing her palms. She hurled it into the altar, which exploded in light. The chamber shook violently. Chains shattered. Marcus lunged, grabbing her arm as the world around them cracked like glass. Then, blackness. Erin woke on the floor of the hotel lobby. Morning light streamed through the windows. Guests bustled about as if nothing had happened. The clerk smiled behind the counter. Rough night? He asked. She backed away, stumbling out the front doors onto the sidewalk. Cars honked. Pedestrians passed by, oblivious. It was over, or so she thought. As she reached for her phone, it vibrated with a new message. From unknown. One escapes, one remains. She turned around, and the hotel was gone. In its place stood an empty lot surrounded by a rusted chain-link fence. She blinked. It was still gone. But in her pocket, the ornate box had returned. Erin dropped it onto the sidewalk, trying to smash it beneath her heel. It wouldn't break. It pulsed once and disappeared. That night, back in her apartment, the water ran red. Her mirrors fogged without steam, and her phone buzzed again. This time a photo of her sleeping, taken from inside her bedroom. The caption read, "He knows where you live now." The night stretched long and silent as Erin sat on her bed, the photo still glowing on her phone screen. Her breath came in shallow bursts. The timestamp was from just 30 minutes ago, but she had been awake. Or had she? She crept toward the bedroom door, every creak of the floor echoing like thunder in her ears. Her apartment, once familiar, now felt like a stranger's, every shadow deeper, every silence louder. She locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and turned on every light. But when she looked into the mirror above her dresser, the reflection was delayed by half a second. Her reflection blinked after her, moved slightly differently, and then it smiled, even though she didn't. Erin screamed and threw the mirror to the floor. It shattered, but the reflection kept grinning in each shard. She backed away, heart pounding. Her phone buzzed again. New message. You brought it with you. Her hands trembled as she typed back, "What are you?" No reply. A low hum began to build in the room, not from any device, from the air itself. Erin grabbed her coat and fled into the city night, the cold hitting her skin like a slap. She didn't know where to go, so she walked, blocks, miles, until the skyline changed, and she found herself near the university where she and Marcus had first met. The campus was quiet, bathed in yellow streetlight. She remembered an old professor, Dr. Harrow, who specialized in occult folklore and paranormal studies. Maybe he could help. She used a campus kiosk to look up his office, still listed, Building 7A, Room 204. The building was dim and dusty, long since reassigned to storage, but the door to 204 was cracked open. A light flickered inside. Aaron stepped in. The room was filled with ancient books, yellowing manuscripts, and chalk sigils drawn across the floor. Dr. Harrow, now in his 60s, sat cross-legged in the middle. "I felt it," he said before she spoke. "You've been marked." She explained what had happened. The hotel, Marcus, the box. His face grew grim. He showed her a sketch in an old leather-bound tome. The box, identical. "It's a vessel," he said, "a prison, but also a lure. Once opened, it connects you to the Whisperer, an ancient entity that feeds on fear, memory, and identity." Aaron asked how to break the connection. Harrow hesitated. "You must return it, not to the hotel, it's gone, but to its anchor point. The city has many old wounds. There's a place beneath it, forgotten tunnels, ritual sites. If you take it there and seal it in blood, yours, it might close the link." Erin's stomach twisted. Harrow handed her a map, scrawled with cryptic directions. "Go tonight. If it stays with you too long, it will consume more than your life." She turned to leave. Harrow stopped her. "And Aaron, don't listen to it, no matter what it says. That's how it gets in." As she left the room, she noticed a mirror hanging in the hallway. Her reflection was missing, just empty air. That night, as she descended into the city's underground tunnels, box clutched tight in her hands, the whispering returned, just beyond hearing, her name, over and over. "Aaron, Aaron, Aaron." The map led Aaron through the sleeping city, past shuttered storefronts and under flickering streetlights, until she found a rusted iron gate hidden behind a collapsed wall near the river. The entrance to the old service tunnels yawned before her like the throat of some ancient beast. The lock had long since rusted through. She stepped inside, boots echoing off stone walls slick with damp. The tunnels were vast, branching in impossible directions, some filled with water, others with dust as thick as fog. The air was heavy, charged with something older than rot. Deeper she went, guided only by the fading ink on Harrow's map and the rhythmic whisper of her name echoing in the distance. "Aaron, Aaron." It came from all directions, neither male nor female, like a voice filtered through wind. Her flashlight flickered, batteries draining unnaturally fast. Shadows moved just beyond the beam. At one junction, she passed a mirror nailed to the wall, cracked, old, but her reflection looked healthy, smiling. She glanced at her own pale, trembling face in confusion. The reflection lifted its hand. She hadn't. She turned away and ran, heart pounding. Finally, she reached the site, a chamber carved in obsidian rock, walls etched with looping runes that seemed to pulse with warmth. A stone altar stood in the center, blackened with centuries of soot. Aaron climbed the steps and set the box on its surface. The whispering stopped. Complete silence enveloped her. She pulled a small knife from her coat, braced herself, and sliced a thin line across her palm. Blood welled up and dripped onto the box. Nothing happened. Then a deep groan shuddered through the walls. The floor vibrated. The box opened on its own. She tried to close it, but invisible force pinned her hands to her sides. Darkness erupted from the box, filling the chamber with writhing tendrils of shadow. Aaron screamed. Faces emerged. Marcus, her mother, herself, all whispering, pleading. She shut her eyes, biting back terror, and shouted, "You have no power over me." But the box wasn't done. A shape formed, a humanoid figure of liquid shadow, eyes glowing white-hot. It stepped from the altar and reached toward her. Aaron struggled. The knife clattered to the floor. She kicked it up, slashed the air, and struck the figure's chest. There was no resistance, but it screamed, a piercing, inhuman wail. The figure dispersed into smoke. The box snapped shut. Silence returned. The runes on the walls dimmed. Aaron collapsed, clutching her bleeding hand, gasping in the thick air. She stumbled out of the chamber, dragging herself back through the tunnels. The city lights never looked so welcoming. But as she emerged, she found her apartment keys in her pocket. She hadn't remembered putting them there. And when she reached her door, it was already unlocked. Inside, the lights were on. Her phone was ringing. The caller ID said, Marcus. She froze. The phone kept ringing. On the wall, a new mirror reflected a version of her, smiling wide, eyes empty, and the whispering started again. The phone kept ringing, each chime sharper than the last, vibrating through Erin's skull like a needle dragged across bone. She let it ring. Her hands trembled as she stepped backward, eyes locked on the mirror where her reflection still grinned unnaturally. The grin widened. Then the mirror shattered, without touch, without sound. Just imploded, glass raining silently onto the wooden floor. Erin rushed to the phone and yanked the cord from the wall, but the ringing didn't stop. It continued echoing through her apartment. She opened her bedroom door. Nothing. Bathroom empty. She checked her closet. A cold gust rushed past her face, smelling of damp soil. Something hissed in her ear. You opened it. She spun around. No one. She grabbed her coat and bolted from the apartment, running into the night, not stopping until she reached Professor Halbert's office at the university. She banged on the door until it creaked open. The old man appeared, bleary-eyed, a trembling candle in one hand. Erin? Why dash dash? She shoved past him, breathless. It's real. The box. It opened. And now it's following me. Halbert paled. He closed the door and led her into the study, cluttered with books and artifacts. You touched it? Erin, no. It's not just a relic. It's a binding vessel. Once opened, the entity isn't banished. It's released. It can move now. It needs a tether. To what? She asked. To you, he whispered. Halbert retrieved a leather-bound volume, flipping pages stained with soot. There might be a way to sever the link, but it's not pleasant. It involves blood, memory, sacrifice. Erin didn't hesitate. Tell me. He outlined a ritual. A place must be chosen where the entity's bond first manifested, her apartment. She must confront it there, bring a mirror, salt, iron, a memory-laden object, and her own blood. At midnight, the veil would thin. Erin returned home just before 12. Her apartment was eerily calm, lights flickering, the air thick. She followed the professor's instructions, drawing a salt circle, placing the mirror, the iron pendant her mother gave her, and the photo of her and Marcus at graduation. Then she cut her hand and let blood drip into the center. For a moment, nothing. Then the walls moaned. The air warped. The mirror pulsed. Her reflection stepped out, eyes glowing. The entity. It took Marcus's shape, then her own. It whispered all her fears, her guilt, every failure, every regret. Erin trembled, tears streaking down her cheeks. She gripped the iron pendant, held it high, and stepped forward. You're not me, she screamed. You're just the rot. The entity lunged. She drove the pendant into its chest. Screams filled the room. The lights exploded. Then, darkness. Erin collapsed. When she awoke, morning sun filtered through the blinds. The circle was broken. The mirror was just glass. The pendant was warm in her hand. She looked around. Peace. Silence. But on the wall, a message scrawled in soot. Not over. The days following the ritual were a strange mix of relief and unease for Erin. The oppressive weight she had carried seemed lighter, yet the message scrawled in soot on her wall haunted her every thought. She tried to resume a semblance of normal life, returning to work at the university, reconnecting with friends, even attempting to sleep without fear. But the city itself felt different, as if a shadow had settled over its streets and alleys. Whispers followed her in crowded cafes, and flickers of movement darted just beyond her vision. One evening, while walking home through the neon-lit streets of downtown, Erin noticed a figure trailing her at a distance, always keeping just out of clear sight. Her heartbeat quickened. She ducked into a narrow side street, only to find herself in front of a boarded-up building she didn't recognize, its windows shattered and walls covered in strange symbols. The air grew cold, and a faint humming sound pulsed through the space, vibrating in her chest. She pushed open the broken door, compelled by a force she couldn't explain. Inside, the darkness swallowed her whole, but her eyes adjusted to reveal a room filled with relics and mirrors, each reflecting distorted images of the city and its ghosts. Suddenly, a cold hand clasped her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispering returned, louder than ever, chanting her name. Panic surged through her veins as she stumbled backward, knocking over a mirror that shattered into shards. In each shard, a different horrifying scene played out. Visions of her friends in danger, her apartment aflame, and a shadowy figure standing at the edge of a bridge, watching. Erin realized the entity was not just tied to her. It was weaving itself into the very fabric of the city, feeding off fear and despair. Desperate, she pulled out her phone and called Professor Halberd. "It's worse," she gasped. "It's spreading." He instructed her to find the source, the old asylum on the city's outskirts, long abandoned but still standing as a monument to forgotten suffering. Legend said that's where the curse began decades ago. Erin knew what she had to do. Gathering her courage and supplies, she prepared to confront the darkness once and for all, deep in the haunted halls of the asylum. The night awaited, full of terrors yet unseen. Erin stood before the crumbling facade of the old Westbrook Asylum, its towering iron gates twisted and rusted, the once grand building now a shadow of decay against the moonlit sky. The air was thick with dampness and a faint metallic scent, mingling with the whispers that seemed to seep from the broken windows. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and the talisman Professor Halberd had given her, a small iron key said to unlock the prison of restless spirits. With a deep breath, she pushed open the gate, the screech echoing like a banshee's wail through the empty grounds. Inside, the asylum was a labyrinth of dark corridors, peeling wallpaper and shattered glass. Every step echoed, each creak a reminder of the countless souls trapped within its walls. As she moved deeper, the temperature plummeted, her breath forming mist in the air. The whispers grew louder, fragmented voices calling out in pain and warning. Erin's flashlight flickered, casting distorted shadows that danced like phantoms. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway slammed shut. She raced towards it, pounding on the warped wood, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as the whispers turned into screams, walls bleeding dark stains, and floorboards trembling beneath her feet. From the darkness emerged a figure, translucent but terrifyingly real, a former patient with hollow eyes and an anguished expression. Erin's heart hammered as the apparition reached out, its touch icy cold, burning with sorrow and rage. She held up the iron key, chanting the incantation Halberd had taught her. The spirit recoiled, letting out a mournful wail that shook the asylum to its core. The door creaked open, and Erin darted inside, finding a room lined with dusty journals and faded photographs. Flipping through the pages, she uncovered the asylum's grim history, experiments on patients, betrayal, and a curse born of suffering and vengeance. At the room's center lay a rusted box, identical to the one from her apartment. The entity's tether was here, anchored by the pain of the forgotten. Erin steeled herself, knowing the final confrontation awaited. She lifted the box, ready to destroy the source and end the nightmare that had consumed her life and threatened the city itself. But as she did, the ground trembled, shadows lunged, and a voice hissed from the darkness. "You cannot undo what was done. We are eternal." The battle for her soul, and the city's, was far from over. Erin's hands shook as she held the rusted box tightly, its surface cold and unforgiving, pulsing faintly as if alive. The weight of the asylum's history pressed down on her. Decades of suffering, betrayal, and anger trapped inside that cursed vessel. The whispers swirled around her like a storm, voices pleading, screaming, cursing. She knew that destroying the box was the only way to sever the entity's hold, but a terrifying thought crept into her mind. What if breaking it unleashed something far worse? The air thickened, shadows deepened, and a figure emerged from the darkness, an imposing shape draped in tattered asylum garments, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. "You think you can save this city?" it sneered. "We are the pain they tried to bury, the forgotten. We are vengeance made flesh." Erin backed away slowly, clutching the iron key and the talisman tightly. She chanted the ancient incantation Halberd had taught her, voice wavering but resolute. The figure lunged, but Aaron dodged, slamming the box onto the floor. It cracked, a low rumble shaking the walls, releasing a torrent of dark smoke that coiled and writhed like living shadows. The asylum seemed to come alive, walls bleeding, floors cracking, spirits wailing in agony. Erin's vision blurred, memories of those who suffered here flooding her mind, their pain, their despair, their endless torment. She understood now. The entity was not just evil. It was a manifestation of all the sorrow and cruelty inflicted within these walls. To defeat it, Erin had to absorb that pain, carry it, and refuse to be broken. Summoning every ounce of strength, she opened her heart to the darkness, letting the shadows wash over her, feeling the agony but not yielding to it. The entity screamed in fury, its form dissolving into countless shards of shadow, scattering like ash in the wind. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Erin collapsed, tears streaming down her face, exhaustion overwhelming her. When she opened her eyes, the asylum was still, the shadows gone. The box was nothing more than rusted metal shards. She rose slowly, feeling lighter yet forever changed. Outside, dawn broke over the city, bathing it in golden light. A new beginning. Erin knew the darkness might never fully disappear, but she had faced it and won. For now. The battle was over, but the scars remained, a reminder of the price paid to protect the living from the past's restless ghosts. Erin stepped out of the crumbling asylum into the first light of dawn, the city stretching before her like a fragile promise of hope. The air smelled fresher, the oppressive weight that had clung to her since the beginning of this nightmare now lifted. But she knew deep down that the scars etched in both the city and her soul would linger for years to come. As she walked through the quiet streets, memories of the past weeks played like a haunting melody in her mind. The shadows in alleyways, the whispers echoing through empty rooms, the spectral faces pleading for release. Though the entity had been shattered, Erin could still feel its remnants in the subtle chill that sometimes brushed against her skin, a reminder that darkness is never truly gone, only waiting for a new chance to rise. Determined to protect the city and honor those lost to the asylum's cruel history, Erin began sharing her story with the local community. She organized gatherings in neighborhood centers, inviting survivors, historians, and curious citizens to learn about the forgotten past that had birthed the terror. Together, they planted memorials near the old asylum grounds and lobbied for the site's preservation, not as a place of fear, but as a solemn reminder of human resilience and the importance of compassion. Meanwhile, Erin found herself drawn back to her work at the university, researching paranormal phenomena and urban legends with renewed purpose. Her experiences had changed her, not just as a scholar, but as someone intimately connected to the unseen forces that shaped their world. Yet even in moments of peace, she remained vigilant. Late at night, when the city's noise faded, Erin sometimes caught glimpses of fleeting shadows at the edge of her vision, or heard faint whispers carried on the breeze. She knew the entity had been defeated, but the balance between light and dark was fragile, and vigilance was the price of safety. As she prepared to face whatever might come next, Erin held on to one truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to stand against it. The city, with all its secrets and scars, was her home, and she would guard it with all she had. Years passed, and the city of Westbrook slowly healed from the haunting shadow cast by the old asylum. Erin became a respected figure in both academic circles and the local community, known not just for her research, but for her courage and dedication to unveiling the truths hidden in the city's darkest corners. The memorials near the asylum grounds stood as solemn monuments to those who had suffered and as beacons of hope for future generations. Yet, despite the peace, Erin never truly let her guard down. The night whispered secrets, and sometimes she sensed eyes watching from the shadows, reminders that darkness never truly sleeps. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled in the chilly wind, Erin received a package with no return address. Inside lay an old tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age but filled with cryptic writings and symbols, eerily similar to those she had encountered in the asylum. As she read, a chill ran down her spine. The writing spoke of a curse older and deeper than she had ever imagined, tied not only to the asylum, but to the very foundations of the city itself. Determined to uncover the full story and protect the city from a fate worse than before, Erin prepared to delve once more into the unknown. She knew the path ahead would be dangerous, filled with mysteries and terrors beyond comprehension. But armed with knowledge, resolve, and the scars of battles past, she was ready to face whatever darkness awaited. The whispers in Westbrook were far from silent, and Erin understood that some stories never truly end. They only wait for the next chapter to be written.